بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد. So we were still discussing the topic of tadlis and mursal khafi, and we mentioned that tadlis, in order for tadlis to happen, there has to be kind of liqa, whereas mursal al-khafi happens with mu'asara and not liqa. Some people, liqa basically means that he has also narrated from the sheikh directly that he's purporting to narrate from now. Mursal khafi is just they were contemporaries, but there is no evidence that they met and there was transmission of knowledge. Some people are of the opinion that in order for tadlis to happen, mutlaq and mu'asara is sufficient. You don't need liqa. Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani rahmatullahi alayhi is debunking this and is saying, no, in tadlis you need liqa, and by liqa you mean riwaya. Mutlaq mu'asara, just being contemporaneous to each other, is not sufficient for that thing to be deemed as tadlis. That's mursal khafi. He's giving more examples on that, and he says, وَيَدُلُّ عَلَى أَنَّ اعْتِبَارَ اللُّقِيِّ فِي التَّدْلِيسِ دُونَ الْمُعَاصَرَةِ وحدها لا بد منه إطباق أهل العلم بالحديث على أن رواية المخضرميين كأبي عثمان النهدي وقيس بن أبي حازم عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من قبيل الإرسال لا من قبيل التدليس وقبيل. So he says the dalil that in tadlis you necessarily require the liqa and not only mu'asara is that the ulama of hadith have declared that the narration of the mukhadramiyyin are people who had long lives, and they found the jahiliyyah, and they found the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and also after the time of the Prophet ﷺ, such as Abu Uthman al-Nahdi and Qais ibn Abi Hazim. Abu Uthman al-Nahdi and Qais ibn Abi Hazim are tabi'is. They are mukhadram in the sense that they were there in Jahiliyyah, then they were there during the time of the Prophet ﷺ and after the Prophet ﷺ, but they never met the Prophet ﷺ. They couldn't come to meet the Prophet ﷺ, so they're not seen as sahabas, they're seen as tabi'i, but they're mukhadram because they have lived through Jahiliyyah. So everyone is agreed upon the fact that the riwayat of the mukhadrameen from the Prophet sallallahu min qabil al-irsal wa min qabil al-tadlis, that the riwayah of these mukhadrameen from the Prophet sallallahu are types of mursal and not tadlis. So when Abu Uthman al-Nahdi, he says qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, everybody knows that this is a mursal and it's not a tadlis. So that's the evidence that just because, so if mahad mu'asara, the mere fact of being contemporaneous to each other, was sufficient to establish tadlis, then the riwayat of Abu Uthman al-Nahdi directly from the Prophet ﷺ would have been tadlis. Okay, but it's not tadlis, it's seen as mursal. Yeah. ولو كان مجرد المعاصرة يكتفى به في التدليس لكان هؤلاء مدلسين. And if being merely contemporary is sufficient for tadlis, then these people would also have been مدلسين لأنهم عاصروا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قطعا. They definitely were contemporary from the Prophet ولكن لم يعرف. However, it is not known how hal laquhu amla, that did they meet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or not. No, there is no indication of that. وممن قال باشتراط اللقاء في التدليس, and those who said that liqa is necessary in tadlis is Imam Shafi'i, Imam Abu Bakr al-Bazzar, and also the discussion of Khatib al-Baghdadi in al-Kifaya also demands or requires, necessitates that he also believes that liqa is a condition in al-Tadlis. وهو المعتمد, and that is the relied upon opinion. Yeah. So there is kind of a mu'tamad opinion here that in Tadlis there has to be liqa, whereas in Musul Khafi there is what we call mu'asara and not liqa. So now we go to another second discussion as to how is one supposed to know whether liqa has happened or not. It says وَيُعْرَفُ عَدَمُ الْمُلَاقَاتِ بِإِخْبَارِهِ عَنْ نَفْسِهِ بِذَلِكَ, that we know about them not meeting when the Rawi himself says that I have not met that so-and-so sheikh. That's how we know عدم اللقاء. أو بجزم إمام مطلع, or from the from the conviction or this the saying with certainty of an imam who is very much aware of these things. So like a very stalwart imam who basically says that no, these people never met. Okay, so these are the two ways. Either the person, the Rawi himself declares that he's never met, or it's the it's an imam who is saying that. ولا يكفي أن يقع في بعض الطرق زيادة راو بينهما. So now he's talking about a third issue, and that third issue is that somebody might look at, so it is not sufficient, let's translate it first. It is not sufficient that there is a addition of a rawi between them in in one strand of the isnad. Okay, so for example, this isnad has a number of strands, and in one strand there is a addition of a rawi. Okay, so if we were to give an example of this, for example, we have we have Sufyan ibn Uyayna, then we have Ma'mar, and then we have Zuhri, Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. And we have another strand which basically of that same hadith, which has directly from Zuhri. Without Ma'mar. So somebody might see this this first strand here, and they might basically think that this Sufyan ibn Uyayna is doing tadlis from Zuhri, because when we look at another strand of this riwayah, we find that there's Ma'mar. This same hadith is narrated by Ma'mar from Zuhri. Imam Ibn Hajar is basically saying that don't get ولا يكفي أن يقع في بعض الطرق زيادة راو بينهما, that it is not sufficient to declare something to be tadlis because there is a ziyada of a rawi in one of the turuqs. Does that make sense, Umar?
Yes.
Yeah. Why does he say that? He says لِإِحْتِمَالِ أَن يَكُونَ مِنَ الْمَزِيدِ, because there is a possibility that the isnad that has the extra rawi, this is from what we call al-mazid fi muttasil al-sanad. Al-mazid fi muttasil al-sanad is basically a type of weakness, and one of the rawis, or one of the narrators before Sufyan ibn Uyayna, has made a mistake and have interpolated Ma'mar into this isnad, whereas actually it's Sufyan ibn Uyayna from Zuhri. And so they've interpolated Ma'mar into the isnad. This is called Mazid, al-Mazid fi muttasil al-sanad. Al-Mazid fi muttasil al-sanad. And Mazid fi muttasil al-sanad is a type of shadh, or it's a type of ilal in the isnad. So Imam Ibn Hajar is saying somebody might look at this isnad, these two isnads, and they might basically say, well, actually, Sufyan ibn Uyayna is doing tadlis from Zuhri, because we know that he didn't hear this hadith from Zuhri directly, and therefore he is doing tadlis because there is another isnad, which is that he has Ma'mar from Sufyan ibn Uyayna from Ma'mar from Zuhri. Imam Ibn Hajar says, no, that interjection of Ma'mar can be al-Mazid fi muttasil al-sanad, meaning that there is a Rawi before Sufyan ibn Uyayna who might have interjected Ma'mar into the isnad as a waham, as a mistake, but the isnad actually is Sufyan ibn Uyayna from Zuhri. And so he basically says that just don't take the issue of Mazid, or just because in some strands of the isnad that there is an extra rawi, don't take that as a dalil of tadlis. So now it basically means that just by looking at, so let me put my, so now it basically, from this you can understand that how difficult this isnad analysis is, because on the face of it, all we need to do is go into a book by Imam Ibn Hajar like Taqrib al-Tahdhib, and then look at whether Sufyan ibn Uyayna did he narrate from Zuhri or not, and we say, he did. But actually, real kind of isnad analysis requires that we, rather than taking this generic approach, we investigate every single hadith on its own merit, every single isnad on its own merit. Because yes, Sufyan ibn Uyayna sometimes directly narrates from Zuhri, sometimes he narrates from Zuhri through Ma'mar. But also, it might be that one of the rawis have, in this particular instance, has made a mistake and have interjected Ma'mar into the picture, whereas Ma'mar wasn't into the picture. How do we kind of ascertain that? That is somebody who has worked with hadith for a lifetime and worked on isnad analysis for a lifetime. They know, they get a feeling for it. They get a malika for it, that, well, no, this is wrong. Although, the data tells us that Sufyan narrates from Zuhri, or Sufyan narrates from Ma'mar to Zuhri. The data tells us both of them is a possibility. But what is the haqiqah in this particular isnad? That you need people who have investigated hadith a lifetime to be able to tell us with certainty, well, this is actually waham, or this is tadlis, or this is shaz, or something else. So this is when it becomes quite difficult. And this is where a lot of people, they kind of fall into troubles, because all they're doing is they're looking at adalat al-rawi, dabt al-rawi, and ittisal al-sanad. Those are the three, the easiest, because you can go into تقريب التهذيب وتقريب التقريب by Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, or Tahdhib al-Kamal, and just look up Adalat Rawi, Dabt Rawi, and look at who the teachers were, who the students were, and then basically say, the sanad is muttasil. But actually, the other two, which is Adam al-Shuzuz and Adam al-Illa, they are difficult, right? Because Adam al-Shuzuz and Adam al-Illa, Illa and Shuzuz happened in seemingly hadiths which are sahih. These are hidden defects. So seemingly on the face of it, the hadith looks sahih, but actually they've got hidden problems. And just by looking at Taqrib al-Taqrib or Tahzib al-Kamal, or any of these books, Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, you won't be able to detect that. You need to be kind of engaging with hadith science for a very long time to actually get a flavor of that. Does that make sense? So that's what he's saying. وَلَا يُحْكَمُ فِي هَذِهِ السُّورَةِ بِحُكْمٍ كُلِّيٍّ. So in this surah, we don't actually, in this situation, we don't give a firm hukum, أي جازم لتعارض احتمال الاتصال والانقطاع, because there is a contradiction as to whether this is muttasil or this is munqati', right? So this is when, and a lot of people don't understand this. With Ulum al-Hadith, primarily people just look at, as I mentioned, Adalat al-Rawi, Dabt al-Rawi, Ittisal al-Sanad. But the Ilal and the Shaz, they're very, very, very difficult. Very difficult to kind of ascertain. Okay. وقد صنف فيه الخطيب كتاب التفصيل لمبهم المراسيل وكتاب المزيد في متصل سند. So Imam Khatib al-Baghdadi has written a book on knowing marasil, for example, التفصيل لمبهم المراسيل, and also a book called al-Mazid fi muttasil al-Asanid. So this is those are the books that you will go to check whether this is Mazid fi muttasil al-Isnad, or this is Shaz, or whether this is Tadlis happening. That's the book that you will go to. So here Imam Ibn Hajar says that he has finished the discussion on we were looking at the omission or ta'an fi riwayah, criticism of the riwayah, and we've identified that criticism of the riwayah happens because of 5 reasons, and those 5 reasons are exactly the 5 reasons that we find in the Sahih, the definition of Sahih, which is that Adalatul Rawi, Dabtul Rawi, Ittisalul Sanad, Adamul Shuzuz, and Adamul Illa. What we have done hitherto was we were discussing the problem with Ittisalul Sanad, and in the problem with Ittisalul Sanad, we looked at Hadith Mu'allaq, we looked at Hadith or Isnad Mu'allaq, we looked at Isnad Mu'adal, we looked at Isnad Mursal, we looked at Isnad Munqati', then we looked at Tadlis, and then we looked at Mursalul Khafi. Those all relate to this point that when there is a break in the isnad, then the hadith becomes mardud. If there is no break in the isnad, ittisal sanad, then the hadith is maqbul. Now he's basically saying وانتهت هنا أقسام حكم الساقط من الإسناد. So we've finished the isnad, the saqit in the isnad, the omission in the isnad. Now we go to the others. What are the others? The others are the other 4 criteria: adalatul rawi, dabtul rawi, yes, adamul shuzuz, and adamul illa. Those 4 are left, and and there can be problems in any of those 4. So this is what he is going to talk about here, and although on the face of it, it looks like that he is going to only talk about adalatul rawi, problems with adalatul rawi and dabtul rawi, actually he is also going to be talking about ilal, and he's also going to be talking about shuzuz. So every criticism comes in here. So ثم الطعن يكون بعشرة أشياء. Then criticism happens happens for 10 reasons. بعضها أشد في القدح من بعض. Some of them are more severe than others. خمسة منها تتعلق بالعدالة وخمسة تتعلق بالضبط. Five of them relate to the عدالة الراوي, and five of them relate to the ضبط الراوي. Although he's saying they're related to عدالة الراوي and ضبط الراوي, but also the shuzuz and the ilal also come in here as well. So it's not only عدالة الراوي and ضبط الراوي, but also shuzuz and ilal are also incorporated, as you can see. Yeah. ولم يحصل الاعتناء بتمييز أحد القسمين من الآخر, and he says the consideration or has not been taken here, or we haven't separated, we haven't gone through the trouble. ولم يحسن الاعتناء, trouble has not been taken in differentiating between one from the other. So what he's saying is that I did not go through the trouble of first mentioning these are the five problems with Adalatul Rawi, and these are the five problems with Dabtul Rawi. He says this problem was not, we didn't look at the problem from this point of view, that we separated the 10, 5 for Adalatul Rawi, one after sequentially. He says لمصلحة اقتضت ذلك, because of a maslaha which demands that we don't separate the Adalatul Rawi, the problem with the Adalatul Rawi and the problem with the Dabtul Rawi. What is this maslaha? He says وهي ترتيبها على الأشد فالأشد في موجب الرد على سبيل التدلي. So he says that is that because of this categorization of the worst and then the worst in rejecting في موجب الرد, in a situation where we are rejecting something sequentially. So he's saying that what we've done is we've amalgamated all of them together, and the reason why we've done this is because sometimes a problem in Adalatul Rawi is more severe than a problem in Dabtul Rawi, but sometimes a problem in Dabtul Rawi is more severe in Adalatul Rawi. Therefore, we put all of them together, and we started with the one which is at the top, which is the worst one, and we worked our way downwards, depreciating in from the severest to the less severe of rad ala sabil al-tadalli sequentially. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that's why he's done that. He said we didn't separate them because some types of criticism in the adala is worse than some types of criticism in the dabt, but some types of criticism in the dabt is worse than some types of criticism in the adala. So it's best to kind of put them, amalgamate them together, and then sequentially from the worst to the least worst, we go down sequentially. That's what he says. He says لأن الطعنة, because criticism is either, so he's going to give us 10 things here, right? So he says لكذب الراوي or لكذب الراوي, both of them are fine to read في الحديث النبوي, because criticism is either, my notes, so okay, criticism is either because the narrator has lied about the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, بأن يروي عنه صلى الله عليه وسلم ما لم يقله متعمدا لذلك, in the sense that this rawi narrates from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam something that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has not said, and he does this intentionally. So he's intentionally lying on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أو تهمته بذلك, or criticism is based on a accusation of lying. Yeah, so the person is not declared a liar, he's just accused of being a liar. So two different things. One is that he's declared a liar, and the other one is that there is a doubt whether he's a liar or not, whether he's been accused of lying. بأن لا يروى ذلك الحديث إلا من جهته ويكون مخالفا للقواعد المعلومة، وكذا من عرف بالكذب في كلامه وإن لم يظهر منه وقوع ذلك في الحديث النبوي، وهذا دون الأول. So, examples of this. How is he accused of lying? That لا يروى ذلك الحديث إلا من جهته, that he is the only one that has narrated this hadith. No one else. This hadith is not narrated other than from him. No one else has narrated this hadith. Point number one. ويكون مخالفا للقواعد المعلومة, and it is it is against known qaida in the Sharia. Against known qaida in the Sharia. So look, no one else other than this person has narrated this hadith, and so there is no corroboration. This person is the only person who's narrated this hadith. And the hadith that he's narrating goes against the spirit of Islam, goes against a qaida. That's point number one. I'm looking at example. Look at some examples later. وكذا من عرف بالكذب في كلامه وإن لم يظهر منه وقوع ذلك في الحديث النبوي. So that's point number one. Point number two is also the person who is a known liar in his everyday speech, even though it's not been established that he has lied about the hadith, right? So the tuhma is comes through two reasons. The accusation comes through two avenues. Either this person is the only one that has narrated this hadith and no one has narrated this hadith. However, the hadith that he's narrating goes against a qaida of the Sharia, goes against the teaching of the Sharia. So we will basically, people will accuse that person of lying because first of all, the hadith goes against a qaida of the Sharia, and secondly, no one else, there's nobody corroborating from this information. So nobody will say that he's a liar, but there is a probability that this person is lying. So that's the tuhma. Or the second one is that this person is known to lie in his everyday speech. However, it's not established whether he has lied in the hadith or not. That person still, there is an accusation of lying. So a tuhma fil kizbi is of a lower degree than the one whose lying has been established. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We can have a look at some examples. Let's see. So we have here Muttaham bil Kidh from Mizan al-I'tidal, Ahmad ibn Abbas ibn Hamawi Abu Bakr al-Khallal متهم. روى أبو بكر بن الشازان عنه عن الزعفراني عن أبي معاوية عن الأعمش عن أبي صالح عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه مرفوعا قال ملعون من سب أباه، فذكر حديثا طويلا. قال الخطيب ما في الإسناد من يحمل عليه سواه. Khatib al-Baghdadi says that no one else other than him narrates this hadith. There's no corroboration, and also the hadith itself goes against qawaid kulliya. Another person is كتاب الموضوعات حديث صنفان لا تنالهما شفاعة المرجئة والقدرية. مأمون بن أحمد is a كذاب. Yeah, okay, so that's a kadhab, and the other one is muttaham bil kidh. So this hadith that Ahmad ibn Abbas al-Hamawi Abu Bakr al-Khallal has narrated, no one else has narrated other than him, and it's a long hadith, and certain parts of it goes against the qawaid of the Sharia. So two things that he's given for muttaham bil kidh. Then we have أو فحش غلطه أي كثرته, the one who makes many mistakes or obscene mistakes. That's the third criticism, is فحش غلط. أو غفلته عن الإتقان, or negligence in accuracy. أو فسقه, or someone is a sinner, أي بالفعل والقول مما لم يبلغ الكفر, either through speech or deeds, as long as they are not kufri. وبينه وبين الأول عموم. Between this and the first type, which is kizb, there is a kind of a general specific relationship. Because every single fasiq, every single kadhib is also a fasiq, right? Every liar
Right.
is a fasiq. So it's basically saying that there is umum khusus mutlaq here, that every kadhib is a fasiq, but not every fasiq is a liar. Yeah, is not a pathological liar. So the question then arises, then why did they single out kizb for? Number one, why couldn't it just be subsumed on the fisq? He says, وَإِنَّمَا أُفِّدَ الْأَوَّلِ لِكَوْنِ الْقَدْحِ بِهِ أَشَدَّ فِي هَذَا الْفَنِّ وَأَمَّا الْفِسْقُ بِالْمُعْتَقِدِ فَسَيَأْتِي بَيَانُهُ. He says, the number one, which is kizb, has been singled out because criticisms, al-qadhu bihi, to criticize, to critique one, to critique one that has been declared as a liar is more severe in this discipline, right? وأما الفسق بالمعتقد, and as far as fisq related to aqidah, فسيأتي بيانه, that will come. So what is he basically saying? He's basically saying that in this discipline of ulum al-Hadith, a liar, somebody who's being critiqued as a liar, is more severe, right, than someone who's just a sinner, right? And then that's why he narrated. He basically said, وَأَمَّا الْفِسْقُ بِالْمُعْتَقَدِ, as for those people whose fisq, whose sin is because of their aqidah. We'll talk about it later. So look at this, right? In aqidah, who is a more worse person from an aqidah point of view? A person who is known as a person who's from the Ahlul Bid'ah, or a person who's a liar, right? So unanimously, the ulama will say that the person who's from the Ahlul Bid'ah is worse, because the Ahlul Bid'ah knowingly is not following the correct aqidah, whereas the fasiq might have correct aqidah, but he's just committing a sin. By the kadhib might have correct aqidah, but he might just be sinning by lying about something, but his aqidah is intact. So from an aqidah point of view, the Ahlul Bid'ah is worse as far as sin is concerned from just a normal fasiq or a liar. However, in Ulum al-Hadith, because Ulum al-Hadith relates to accurate transmission and reception of information, it's all about accuracy, it's all about truthfulness. So lying then becomes the cardinal sin. A person might be Ahlul Bid'ah and his aqidah might be wrong, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a liar. But because the nature of ulum al-hadith is such that it's all about accuracy, it's all about truthfulness in passing on information, then the sin of lying here is worse than the sin of committing any other kind of sins. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if someone is a like, let's say someone was a murderer and he killed somebody, but they're known to have never told a lie. So they did one sin, but they didn't do the other. So in terms of ilm al-hadith, this would be better than someone who is a liar, but is a known liar about everything, but is not a murderer.
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't still mean that this guy is off. It just means in the in the grand scheme of things, if you were to basically put a hierarchy, then at least for ulum al-Hadith, which is related to accuracy, which is related to truthfulness, which is related to transmission, receiving and transmitting information truthfully, accurately, the kadhab is worse than the murderer. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Because the key objective here is we're trying to figure out accurately exactly what the information is.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. أو وهمه, or somebody's waham can be mistake, or somebody's so khata is a mistake, but waham is basically like a confusion, like severe mistake or confusion. بأي يروي على سبيل التوهم, that he is narrating under this kind of misunderstanding. So the reason why it's more severe than khata, just a mistake, is because in waham the person is working on the premise that he is in the right, and then but actually,
Sheikh, I see that the first five were related to adala, right? And the next five are related to dabt. Is the order of these five, or no, they're not related? Okay, sorry.
No. So if you want to do this, kizb al-rawi or kadhib al-rawi, adala, adala or dabt. No, you tell me, adala or dabt?
It would be actually kind of both, right? But more dabt. Right. No. Kidb al-rawi, because you're intentionally lying. I mean, that's adala, right?
Yeah, because a liar, a pathological liar, can still have the best memory in the world.
Good, right. Good point.
He can still have the best memory in the world. So this is not a critique of his dabt. It's a critique of his adala, his character. تهمة بذلك عدالة الضبط.
عدالة.
Yeah. فحش غلط عدالة الضبط.
That's doubled, right?
Yeah. غفلة في الإتقان عدالة الضبط.
That's doubled. Okay.
Yeah. فسق عدالة الضبط.
عدالة.
عدالة. وهم عدالة الضبط.
ضبط.
ضبط. Yeah. أو مخالفته أي للثقات. Okay. So or the rawi is contradicting more stronger rawis, right? مخالفة. عدالة أو ضبط.
That would be doubled.
Yeah, that would be doubled. So so remember I mentioned, so waham, waham is a type of ilal. So ilal comes in here, right? Mukhalafa is mukhalafa is either a type of ilal or mukhalafa can be shaz as well. Yeah, because remember shaz. What is shaz? Shaz is a fiqarawi narrating against the riwayat, contradicting the riwayat of awthaq rawi or arjah ruwat. Yeah. So that's shaz. What is so shaz and muhkam, and then opposite to that is ma'ruf and munkar. Munkar is when a weak narrator does mukhalafa of a thiqa narrator. This is called munkar. Opposite to that is ma'ruf. So here, those kind of ilal and shuzuz, they come inside this number 7. Yeah, number 6 and number 7. So it's not only adala and dabt, is ilal and shuzuz are also coming in as well. أو جهالته, jahala, okay, his ignorance. بأن لا يعرف فيه تعديل ولا تجريح معين, that this person is an ignoramus person, that he does not really know the difference between jarh and ta'dil. Yeah, is that ضبط or adala?
ضبط.
Yeah, ضبط. أو بدعته أو بدعته وهي اعتقاد ما أحدث على خلاف المعروف عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا بمعاندة بل بنوع شبهة. So this is the belief of that something ما أحدث على خلاف المعروف, that something is the belief which is contradicting what is known from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not out of mu'anida, yeah, not out of mu'anida, not out of hostility, بل بنوع شبهة, but because of a type of confusion. Every single bid'ati or every single people, see, bid'ah is a relative concept, right? We will call the Shi'as bid'ah or ahlul bid'ah, but the Shias will call us ahlul bid'ah. You see,
right.
It depends who is calling who ahlul bid'ah. And bid'ah, a bid'ah person does not do bid'ah because this guy wants to challenge the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a way, la bi mu'anadati, not because of any kind of hatred, but because this person genuinely believes that this is the correct teaching from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there is a confusion, there is a shubha there. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would that be more dabat then, the bid'ah, or would it be adala?
It's adala. Bid'ah is adala.
Because it's but they're saying here where he's saying no la bi mu'anada, is he I don't know, I guess is it well, I guess it is.
So this is a discussion that he's having, which is not really actually related to Ulum al-Hadith. He's just basically saying a bid'ati does bid'ah not out of any kind of extreme opposition to the Prophet ﷺ or to the others, but because they genuinely. So he's in a way he's justifying and vindicating them that they're not some kind of extremist. They basically do it because they genuinely believe that this is the correct thing to believe. Yeah.
Right.
Imam al-Shatibi defines bid'ah as هي طريقة البدعة هي طريقة مخترعة البدعة هي طريقة مخترعة في شريعة الله تعالى تضاهي به طريقة مخترعة تضاهي بها شريعة الإسلامية, that it is a constructed path which directly wants to challenge the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the idea that in bid'ah there is a challenge. But nevertheless, Imam Ibn Hajar is saying the people who ahlul bid'ah, they do it not, and I think one of the reasons why he's mentioning this is because there is a lot of Hadith scholars who have got kind of tendencies of other types of tashayyu' or irja or others they have. So I think he's trying to kind of lessen the blow here. Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, although he's mentioning all of these things, unless somebody is an outright, bid'ati or outright kadhab, other than all of that, primarily it is the dabt that the ulama look at. So if a person is kadhab or tuhma, or outright stalwart, kind of like inadi Shia or something, then the problems with the adala is tolerated as long as the dabt is more secure, right? We see that although this is theoretically he's mentioning this, but we actually see that unless they are kadhab and tuhma bil kidb and bid'ati with a penchant to destroy the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, then normally the adala is tolerated as long as the bid'ah, as long as the dabt is good. Okay. أو سوء حفظه, or he just has bad memory. وهي عبارة عن لا يكون غلطه أقل من إصابته. And what is سوء حفظ? سوء حفظ is that وهي عبارة ألا يكون غلطه أقل من إصابته, that his mistakes are not less than his non-mistakes, his corrections. Yeah. So that basically means somebody's got bad memory. Su'u hifz, his mistakes are more than his because if his corrections are more than his mistakes, then we won't classify as su'u hifz, because everybody makes mistakes. وَالْعِصْمَةُ لِلَّهِ وَلِرَسُولِهِ. Does that make sense?
It does. It confuses me why Su' al-Hifz is the 10th one on his list of rankings, because you could see theoretically, I mean, even nowadays, when someone has, for example, testimony and there's a court and there's, you're trying to report something, the memory issues is a key thing that is often probed, because if the memory is off, even you could be the best person and the most honest person, but you could make big mistakes in the reporting.
Okay, so I mean, you have to understand that these 10, right?
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I get what you're saying. These 10 are from the Mardud. He's not basically saying that these are maqbul at all. He's saying these are from the Mardud.
Okay.
That's the first point, right? That's the first point. But the second point is that even if somebody's memory is weak, right, their testimony can be salvaged if another person gives witness, right? And that person might base, or if there are other circumstantial evidence to prove that what this person is saying, despite the fact that this person's got weak memory, there is circumstantial evidence that what this person is saying is correct. So the reason why it's number 10 is because if we are able to bring any circumstantial evidence, then we will tolerate that weakness, right? Because there are other corroborating evidence. Whereas if there is somebody who is a kadhab or muttaham bil kidh, then even you bring every single evidence in the world, we still won't accept that riwayat.
Right. That makes sense.
Do you get it?
Yes.
Okay. So now he's given a summary of these 10, which is كذب الراوي, تهمة الراوي, فحش غلط, غفلة, فسق, وهم, مخالفة, جهالة, بدعة, and سوء حفظ. He's given us 10 of these, and now what he's doing is he is going to go into a long-winded, drawn-out discussions of these 10 points. Okay, and this is it's a very important discussion. So let's start. فالقسم الأول, right? So you always need to go back to this page. What he will refer back to. So what is قسم الأول? كذب الراوي أو كذب الراوي. القسم الأول وهو الطعن بكذب الراوي في الحديث النبوي هو الموضوع. كذب الراوي, the first one, what is it called? It's called موضوع. So a person who is a kadhab, who's been declared a liar, if he narrates a hadith, then that hadith is known as hadith mawdu'. Does that make sense? It's a fabricated hadith.
Yes.
والحكم عليه بالوضع إنما هو بطريق الظن الغالب لا بالقطع. So he's just basically saying something that to call it a fabricated hadith is to do with kind of the probabilities, Zannul Ghalib. We can't say for 100% certain, because even the devil is not void of the truth, right? But it's a kind of a Zannul Ghalib probability. إذ قد يصدق الكذوب, right? Because even the liar can be speaking the truth. لكن لأهل العلم بالحديث ملكة قوية يميزون بها ذلك. But the Ahl al-Hadith have got a malaka, a capacity, a capability where they're able to kind of distinguish and differentiate between these two. وإنما يقوم بذلك منهم من يكون اطلاعه تاما وذهنه ثاقبا وفهمه قويا ومعرفته بالقرائن الدالة على ذلك متمكنة. and only the stalwart ulama are able to kind of really know if the kadhab is lying or not, right? And therefore we kind of give a blanket that if this person has been declared to be a kadhab, then his hadith is mawdu', right? يقوم بذلك ما يكون اطلاعه, only those ulama whose knowledge of the entire field is complete, who have a broad overview of the entire, complete overview of the entire field. وَذَهْنُهُ ثَاقِبٌ, and those whose faculty of thinking is sharp. ثاقب, شهاب الثاقب, striking, so sharp. وَفَهْمُهُ قَوِيًّا, and have strong, good understanding, and they have a very strong grasp of understanding, subtle evidences and subtle nuances. بالقرائن الدالة على ذلك متمكنة. How do we know? So after he's mentioned that, he basically says, well, how can we detect وضع موضوع? He said, وقد يعرف الوضع بإقرار واضعه. We can know wada because of the fabricator confessing. قال Ibn Daqiq, sometimes fabricators they kind of fabricate it. For example, Abu Ismah Nuh ibn Abi Maryam was a Zahid. He was a Zahid, and he was also Hanafi as well. So, but he says that he's also fabricated a number of hadith, and he basically says, when I saw that people were too much into Hanafi fiqh and they stopped reading the Quran, I fabricated a hadith on the fadail of the Quran. So this is him, confessing that he fabricated that. قال ابن دقيق العيد, Imam Ibn Daqiq al-Eid says, لكن لا يقطع بذلك لاحتمال أن يكون كذب في ذلك الإقرار. However, we should not take his words for granted, because there is a possibility that he is also in his confession he's lying, right? Which then leads to a kind of perpetuality.
Right.
وفهم منه بعضهم أنه لا يعمل بذلك الإقرار أصلا وليس ذلك مراده. Some people have interpreted Ibn Daqiq al-Eid saying that we should not accept the confession at all, but this is not what Ibn Daqiq al-Eid meant. وإنما نفي القطع بذلك ولا يلزم من نفي القطع نفي الحكم. He's basically saying that by taking away the certainty, all he's doing is he is taking away the certainty of believing in the confession. That doesn't mean that by taking away the certainty of believing in the confession, we take away the hukum itself. No. So because some people are saying that, if we can't believe his confession, then we should accept his hadith. Yeah? Because his confession is a lie, right? Imam Ibn Hajar is saying, no, this is not what he meant. He just basically says that we can't just say 400% sure because you might be lying. But that doesn't mean that we still put the same hukum in the hadith. لأن الحكم يقع بالظن الغالب, because the hukum in everything happens with ظن الغالب. We cannot give certainty in anything. There is no certainty, right? The 99% of Ulum al-Shari'iyya works on ظن الغالب, and that's because we can't get certainty in most things in our life. وهو هنا كذلك, and this is also like this. ولولا ذلك لما صاغ قتل المقر بالقتل. If that was the case, then it would not have been permissible to execute the person who confesses to a killing. ولا رجم المعترف بالزنا, and the person who confesses, so the person who confesses to murder, and the person and also stoning the person who confesses to zina, لاحتمال أن يكونا كاذبين فيما اعترف به, because there is a possibility that they might be liars in what they are conceding to. Does that make sense? When a person confesses in court that I am the murderer, then the laws of qisas are applied. When a person confesses, obviously there has to be circumstantial evidence. Sometimes somebody might do this, like for example, a son has murdered and the father is taking the blame, so that the son doesn't get penalized. Those kind of things, those kind of altruistic, sacrifices do happen. So obviously we don't take it for face value, but rather there is an investigation, and after the investigation, the qisas happens. But if we cannot take the confession of a liar because there is a possibility that the person is lying in that confession, then we cannot apply any of the laws of the Sharia. Yeah, that's what he's saying. But this discussion is outside of the discussion of really ulum al-Hadith. ومن القرائن التي يدرك بها الوضع ما يؤخذ من حال الراوي, and sometimes the indicators through which one knows about if a hadith is fabricated or not is by looking at what we can extrapolate from the situation of the rawi. كما وقع للمأمون ابن أحمد. So it happened, this is a famous story, happened to Ma'mun ibn Ahmad أنه ذكر بحضرته الخلاف في كون الحسن سمع من أبي هريرة أو لا, فساق في الحديث إسنادا إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال سمع الحسن من أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه. Just by looking at the situation. So this person, Ma'mun ibn Ahmad, brought a hadith where in the isnad he says سمع الحسن قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم سمع الحسن البصري من أبي هريرة. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right.
Right. وكما وقع لغياث, and you get this hadith about Ash'aris and Maturidis as well. These are fabricated. وكما وقع لغياث ibn Ibrahim حيث دخل على المهدي. This is a famous story. Ghiyath ibn Ibrahim, he visited Mahdi, the Abbasid Caliph, فوجده يلعب بالحمام, and he found him playing with doves. فساق في الحديث إسنادا إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا سبق إلا في نصل أو خف أو حافر أو جناح فزاد في الحديث. So there is no racing in or there is no competition in nasl, which is throwing spears, or khufrin or hafin, racing, or janahin, or racing birds or racing doves. فزاد في الحديث أو جناح فعرف المهدي أنه كذب لأجله فأمر بذبح الحمام. But Mahdi realized that this person lied. Ghiyath ibn Ibrahim lied just to make him happy, so he ordered all the doves to be slaughtered. Because these are the reason why this person lied on the Prophet ﷺ, and then he gave gold to the person and told him to get lost. Right? Some ulama, they critique al-Mahdi, and they basically say, well, Mahdi shouldn't have done that. He should have chastised that person rather than killing all the doves, because that then kind of makes that person, Ghiyath ibn Ibrahim, a bit more bold to do it again. Right? ومنها ما يؤخذ من حال المروى or marwi, that from one of the signs is that you look at the riwayat itself, كأن يكون مناقضا لنص القرآن أو السنة المتواترة أو الإجماع القطعي أو صريح العقل حيث لا يقبل شيء من ذلك التأويل. That you look at this and you see that it is going against the nas of the Quran or a sunnah mutawatira or a qat'i ijma, or even plain logic reason, and there is no other ta'wil that you can do here. Now obviously this point is very, very subjective, right? Because what this point is saying is that in order to see whether a hadith is true or is it false, we look at the matan, right? And we look at the nature of the matan. Although theoretically everyone accepts this, Jonathan Brown in one of his articles, he writes that there is no evidence of the muhaddithun declaring a hadith weak or fabricated or weak primarily on the basis of matan analysis and without isnad analysis. So although theoretically they accept it, but in practice it's very difficult to find. Whereas in the modern period, you will get people rejecting hadiths left, right, center because of the text matan itself. ثم المروي تارة يخترعه الواضع. So sometimes the riwayat, the hadith, sometimes it is concocted by the wadi', the fabricator. For example, man akal al-badhinjan dakhal al-jannah. A greengrocer said, whoever eats, aubergines will go to Jannah. وتارة يأخذ كلام غيره كبعض السلف الصالح أو قدماء الحكماء أو الإسرائيليات. Or sometimes what you do is you take the words, sometimes it's taken from somebody else's words, such as the pious predecessors or the ancient philosophers, or from the biblical tradition, and then they add قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم onto it. أو يأخذ حديثا ضعيف الإسناد فيركب له إسنادا صحيحا ليروج. Or sometimes what happens is that hadith with ضعيف isnad is taken and then is stripped of the ضعيف isnad, and then a kind of sahih isnad is put onto it, prefixed to it, so that this hadith becomes quite famous. So here, although the hadith the text has not been concocted and fabricated, but the isnad has been fabricated. Yeah. And then he talks about وَالْحَامِلُ لِلْوَضْعِ. What are the motivators of wada, of fabrication? He says إِمَّا عَدَمُ الدِّينِ كَالزَّنَادِقَةِ, either lack of religion, for example, like the Zindiq, أو غلبة الجهل كبعض المتعبدين, or because of extreme overpowering of ignorance, like some worshippers who make up hadith because they want people to worship more, أو فرط العصبية كبعض المقلدين, or extreme loyalty, such as like some of the muqallidun have made a hadith about Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, and saying that the best of the people is Abu Hanifa and the worst of the people of Jahannam is Shafi'i. There is a fabricated hadith. أو اتباع هوى بعض الرؤساء, or to follow the whims of some leaders like Ghiyas ibn Ibrahim did with al-Mahdi. أو الإغراب لقصد الاشتهار, or to also woo people also in order to become famous. Yeah, also to become famous. وكل ذلك حرام بإجماع من يعتد به, and all of this is haram according to the ijma of the people that we consider. إلا أن بعد الكرامية وبعد المتصوفة نقل عنهم إباحة الوضع في الترغيب والترهيب. Some Sufis and some Karamiya Shias have said that it is permissible to fabricate in targhib and tarhib, in making people do good things. وهو خطأ من فاعله نشأ عن جهل, and this is a mistake from these people which is born out of ignorance. لأن الترغيب والترهيب من جملة الأحكام الشرعية, because targhib and tarhib, telling people to good and stopping them from doing bad, is also a part of the Sharia. واتفقوا على أن تعمد الكذب على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من الكبائر, and the ulama have all agreed that to purposely lie on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is from one of the major sins. وبالغ أبو محمد الجويني فكفر من تعمد الكذب على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. And Imam Abu Muhammad al-Juwayni, he basically said he emphasized this to such a level that he did takfir of anybody who lied on the Prophet purposely. واتفقوا على تحريم الرواية الموضوع إلا مقرونا ببيانه. And the ulama have all agreed that it is haram to narrate a hadith mawdu except with the caveat مقرونا ببيانه, that it is mentioned that this is a fabricated hadith, to teach people, to warn people, but they have to say this is a fabricated hadith. لقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم من حدث عني بحديث يرى أنه كاذب فهو أحد الكاذبين أخرجه صحيح مسلم. Okay, inshallah, we will stop here, and we will. So there won't be a class next week because I am traveling to Turkey for a conference, so I won't be here. Okay, so we will meet in two weeks' time. Jazakumullah khair.
Inshallah. Wa iyyakum. Thank you, Shaykh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Islam.